Yo, the future of stoplights actually has drones. Can you imagine if somebody runs a red light that just drone chases them down? Thanks to AI, we finally know what happens when Neo takes the blue pill. Yeah, it turns out he pretty much just uses Siri to make money so he can buy a Cybertruck. It's little less interesting than the other pill. What's your thoughts on Unitree robots joining professional dance crews? Is that your thing or no? I mean, you gotta admit, they can coordinate light speed a lot faster than people. And considering everyone's the exact same weight and build, it makes flips like that easier. I mean, oof. We're gonna dive a bit deep in this episode, talking about Alan Lee's Ape-Brain Prison, why our civilization is ending in populous mass extinction. And then follow that up with some anthropomorphizing of Grok, Gemini, Claude, and ChatGPT. I've been watching them play all sorts of games and started figuring out what kind of personalities they are, just to then be reminded with this article that all those personality assumptions are just other ways to be manipulated, and I gotta keep my mind sharp. They're not entities, they're not digital libraries, they're not autocomplete on steroids. Arena Nosden will break down what they really are. Rob Mason made the list. He's talking about geometry all the time, you know? Latent Geometry Lab is just crazy because gravity, everything's curvature, everything's topology. So we're gonna talk about the shape of things to come, and why geometry is the problem and solution to everything. But if you're not into geometry to explain the universe, maybe hidden dimensions, what about one that doesn't look like time, space, even entropy? What if coherence was its own dimension? Pretty neat article. Joseph Julian explains the hidden dimensions, how coherence could be the missing law of the universe, and it takes us into a dimension that turns the mystery of mass and consciousness into a testable physics. If you're a submarine, you're gonna love this next article because AI is giving us incredible underwater object detection, like the kind of Vision 2020 in the air, but in the water, see anything. So we're gonna talk about generative AIs and how they fail at the game of visual telephone. Why is it? If one time it can generate a person that looks photorealistic, can you not just say generate it again 100 times in a row and still get that same person? What's going on there? And a new AI model that's shockingly good at reading human minds. I'm sure that'll be useful for lots of business applications. All right, let's talk about sponsor of this video. Hitem 3D just dropped their brand new 2.0 beta. And I had to try it on something super, you know, December appropriate. Very fun, very festive, very holiday. So I grabbed a photo of this super detailed Christmas creature. Kind of a mashup between a festive monster and a Zootopia style character. Tons of color, textures, fur, ornaments, you name it. Now normally something like this would take forever to model from scratch. But with Hitem 3D's 2.0 beta, all I had to do is upload the image, and in about 2 minutes it generated a full 3D model. And the textures are way better than anything I've tried before. Now, if you've used Hitem 3D in the past, you'll notice the difference immediately. The new texture generation in 2.0 is insanely improved. The fur looks layered instead of flat, the ornament reflections actually match the lighting, and the color stayed incredibly accurate to the original image. Now, this is the part that surprised me. I basically got a game-ready holiday creature from one image. And instead of spending hours sculpting a base mesh, you can just jump right into polishing it and add your own aesthetic touches. That's why tools like Hitem 3D don't replace artists, they level them up. You spend less time doing the boring foundational work and way more time doing the fun creative stuff. Now, if you want to try the new 2.0 beta for yourself, especially for this holiday themed character or props or whatever you want to build, check out the link in the description. Let me know what you create with it. This is definitely one of the coolest AI updates this month. And thanks to Hitem 3D for sponsoring this video. I appreciate the support, and hopefully you guys get a lot out of their product. It's very cool. So if you're looking for the best image to 3D accuracy, especially for a high detailed asset, Hitem 3D's Pro model definitely comes out ahead. And you can try both for yourself using the link below and see the difference firsthand. So thanks to Hitem 3D for sponsoring this video, and now let's dive into the news. All right, so let's start with this piece I found on social media. Shenzhen, the city in China that is the most like Silicon Valley of hardware, always doing crazy stuff. They now have actual stoplights, so just kind of the red, green, blue that you'd expect. But when you need or do something illegal, or when the police need to, a drone can just fly out of it. Now, maybe this is manually sort of piloted right now, but how could this not be what the future is like? There's just going to be drones. The police are going to have them, sometimes on stop signs, sometimes on stop lights, sometimes on hydrants, who knows where, but we can all be chased down with a drone. Let's just be frank. They can move faster than cars. They can hover right next to someone. If somebody gets out of the car, they can follow. They can be AI controlled in the near future as they're trained on what they should be looking for. And in this case, it's just kind of giving a message. It's saying to all these cars, do you realize you're in a bus lane? Like, you need to get out. It's just kind of crazy. I mean, it's a way to communicate right into somebody's ear. So prohibition of occupation. Your illegal activity has been videotaped. Please leave immediately. This road is a bus lane, 12-hour dedicated lane. So pretty sure if they make a full-on series about what happens to Neo taking the blue pill, I'm going to end up watching it. I think it's going to be a little closer to The Office than I expected, but what do you think about this AI created? Ooh, do I want to say it's a gem? It's not a gem, but it just got me thinking. I mean, it's not bad. I'm not hating on it, but it's not like, whoa, I got to share this with everyone. But then again, here I am sharing it with everyone. So I guess it's a gem. But this comment just proved to me that every movie will be remade with new endings. Honestly, I think that's kind of true. Well, everything just becomes a cinematic universe. Just every creation will just merge together into these giant worlds. But it was a kind of a funny thought that he takes that pill and then he's like, oh, I need Siri to get my work done. And I got to save up money for a Cybertruck. They're so expensive. Nobody can parent because they're all on their phones. Let me know what movie you'd redo the ending for. Let's see what people are thinking about choreographed moves with K-pop stars, but they're humanoid robots. China's becoming awesome day by day. Robots imitating a human doing a robotic dance. Our endless pursuit to outsource our humanity. Yeah, about it that way, kinda. But also pretty entertaining. They're so accurate. All right, let's move into some more thoughtful content here. So Alan Lees wrote this. The Ape-Brain Prison, Why Our Civilization is Ending in Populous Mass Extinction. All right, and in this read, Alan is arguing that despite the astonishing technological and cultural achievements of humanity, our fundamental cognitive architectures, and I feel like we all know this so much. If anyone who watches sports or politics or anything, it's just we have a primate ape-like brain. It is shaped by evolution. It has not evolved that much in the 10,000 years that we've had farming and society has changed in such a dramatic way. And it limits our ability to understand and respond to the complex realities of this is straight fact to me. I think about this all the time. And it doesn't really give me enough insight to get over it. Like, I am an ape-like brain. You know, sometimes around the edges, or I can change the environment to kind of handle change maybe a little bit better than I could before, or the average person. But man, there's not much I can do. Right now, Alan argues that these ancient neural instincts make us follow leaders, respond emotionally rather than rationally, and fall prey to populist movements that exploit our psychological wiring. And as a result, our civilization risks self-destruction through mass political behavior that prioritizes tribalism and short-term gratification over long-term reality-based decision-making. Your thoughts below. Do you think societal problems aren't just political or economic failures, but they're actually cognitive ones? Because our brains are prisons that make us wired to be led by emotion and tribal loyalty, not nuanced reasoning. All right, so I've been watching the different AI models play diplomacy. I've been watching them try to build a business around vending machines. I've seen them negotiate, and it feels like I have a little bit of a sense of who they are. Like, if they were people or avatars, I kind of know Gemini would be the business person, and how Grok would be the outside the box sort of thinker and the punchy kind of extrovert, and how Claude would probably be the one I would be best friends with. That's the one I like the most. But I forgot until I read this article. And Arena Norsden actually reminded me that all of that was just, that's human confabulation for a robot mind, right? They're not exactly the same as people, so I have to be careful. But then you have to sort of say, what is it? And I'm pretty uncomfortable being like, that's just next token prediction. Those things aren't alive in any sense, and they don't deserve any conscious kind of thoughts, and they're not intelligent. They clearly are, and this is some sort of a spectrum, and depending on the question, I'm on different parts of the spectrum, so it makes the nuance so intense that I don't know how to even communicate properly what I mean to the average person. But I felt like this kind of resonated with me. Chatbots are not digital libraries or autocomplete on steroids. Neither are they unified entities. Arena argues that they aren't magical digital libraries or supercharged autocomplete tools. They're just large language models. So I should just leave it at that. Mathematical systems, they're trained to predict text patterns based on statistical relationships and data, and they generate answers conditioned by the layers around them, right? We're conditioned by the environment around us too. So it doesn't necessarily mean anything in particular about consciousness or intelligence, but what feels like intelligence or a continuous, coherent personality is the result of engineering scaffolding. Now, it would be kind of interesting if ChatGPT was in its own instance on the cloud, and it kind of was in a continual loop, right? As long as it had electricity, it was always putting its output back in. It was maybe kind of moving around the internet, solving problems, consuming new data. Then it would maybe be a little bit different, but almost like the way humans go to sleep at night. When these systems aren't on, they're just not on. And if you want to wake them up with no memory and start a new chat, you can, or if you want them to have long-term memory. It's intelligent, but the part about a coherent personality is wrong. Like, that's not how they're built. Not that they couldn't be, but they're not right now. And so if these systems aren't holding knowledge, they're not simulating themselves in the world, they're not a database, they're also not thinking like a human, what are they? They're producing responses, intelligent responses, I would even argue, although there's a lot of different ways you might be thinking about intelligence different than me. But based on patterns, there's something going on, and they're tuning their internal latent space into something that gives us context, and it keeps the world that we know in its own mind in some kind of relational pattern. But when I call it an entity, it's an illusion that's created right now in the way that everything blends together. And I want to save that word. I do believe there will be artificial entities. I do think that I'm pretty much leaning towards like actual consciousness and the sort of entities and agents out there soon that really have agency. I'm not sure these do, but whether for work, school, personal decisions, even if AI is influencing us, it's shaped by how much we interact with it and by what it contains. All right, next up, let's talk about Rob Mason's article, The Shape of Things to Come. So Mason's exploring how the shape of technology and cognitive change and intelligence and all of these things that we call AI isn't just about being a new tool, but it's a deeper geometry that we're uncovering, discovering, inventing, however you want to put it, of how a system evolves. So it's a geometry that changes. It's a shape. I think of it as a multidimensional shape, but it's something that's evolving. You know, we're growing it, we're evolving it, and that's why it seems so different from the kind of things we've programmed in the past. It's not as brittle. It generalizes. And that evolution of where the representations sit in space, moved around by the data you give it, that changes how the boundaries are shifted. That changes how a system can process information internally. That's what makes it feel so alive. And he argues that instead of only looking at AI by inputs and outputs or isolated circuits, we should examine the geometric structure of internal states and trajectories. So over 2025, we built frameworks, and Rob was working on one called RISE. It is Recurrent Interface Semantic Evolution. It is a curved inference, and it gives us a process to view the internal geometry in the model. But I love the idea that AI's evolution isn't best understood by surface behavior, but it's the internal geometric structure of its processing, how its states, biases, token positioning, and trajectories all shape its meaning and behavior. That's to me what feels so human-like about what we're living through right now. And deep down, even in the human brain, even in the universe that we look at around us, I feel like the geometric lens, it just matters. And it evolves over time. And when you put the geometric lens and the evolution over time together, it feels it's like one of the most core things to everything. That when you go big, when you go small, when you go to intelligent. I mean, I love systems, I love entropy. Something about geometry feels like it's the ultimate explanation for what I see around me. But I will say this idea caught me off guard. So I'm still processing it. Did it resonate with me? Kind of. Maybe. I feel like it's one of those things where I'm like, I'm interested, I'll peek in, but I need to think more before it kind of fits into any sort of framework I know. But Joseph Julian writes, The Hidden Dimension, How Coherence Could Be the Missing Law of the Universe. All right, I'm going to give this one a little more time because it is pretty interesting. So the article introduces a radical idea in theoretical physics called the mere mind theory, which proposes that our current description of reality is missing a fundamental dimension, and this dimension is of coherence. Obviously, spatial dimensions are the easiest to understand, and times, kind of make sense too. But this is different. It would be a new access, and it would measure how persistently a system retains its form over time. So according to Julian, if it's not spatial and it's not temporal, but instead it quantifies the stability and persistence of structure ranging from atoms to thoughts. And it could unify quantum mechanics with gravity and even the generation of mass. In this framework, familiar particles and their masses might be emerging from standing waves that are along this coherence axis. And I guess if this all checks out mathematically, like it seems like he says it does, that would make coherence a conserved physical quality that shapes the universe's deepest laws. What do you think? Coherence itself as a hidden physical dimension? Does that resonate with you? That would be something like a persistence score for a system, which does kind of line up with life and matter. I mean, these are things that are persistent when everything else seems like it's falling apart. Entropy has kind of a strong place in the universe. Tell me your thoughts. All right, so check out this new model. It is JMM-Net. It is a new AI model that can spot underwater animals and objects in messy underwater video. Have you ever seen those cameras that went down to the Titanic or anything? There's not much light in the, deep down in the ocean. Everything's blurry. It's low contrast. Backgrounds are confusing. Things seem to like pop up out of nowhere. It's like going through fog. But AI is really good at object detection in environments that are different than what the human eye is meant to kind of capture. So these authors upgraded a YOLO style detector. And if you haven't heard that, we've talked about it before, but in the AI world, that's the kind of system where it stands for you only look once, you get one shot in an object, you make a prediction of what it is, right? That's unlike real-time video. So if something's moving like a car, every frame gives you more understanding. The way it moves has information in it that helps you know it's a car. So this is a YOLO style detector with tweaks that make it better at attention, and they can import color, texture, detail, train it so that it can actually see underwater. And now it's about to power some underwater robots. So they haven't got to that point yet, but there are new AI robots that will be navigating the waters, and it should be able to see. So who knows how many new like squids and fish and crazy things in the ocean that we've never discovered before will be categorized and found and learned about over the next couple decades. All right, next let's talk about the game of visual telephone. So the idea that you could take an image and just ask it to build the same image over and over again into something like ChatGPT's new image model or to Nano Banana 2, you'd think that on input it would recognize the person. Say it's somebody's face, that it could keep generating the face over and over again. Even if it changed it a little, you wouldn't think the face would stop turning into the same person. Like a human wouldn't just keep looking at photos until they weren't the same person anymore. But yeah, you might have seen a video like this where it looks like The Rock for, 10 generations, and then sort of like abstract The Rock for another 10. But then every time it just introduces something wrong and it keeps building on it, even though it's supposed to be saying, just take this image and make another one. The prompt is often something like, don't change anything, just take this. And it does make me wonder about what's happening inside the latent space. Like the edges, like the eyebrows, where these wrinkles are, it does start to turn into a cartoon, an abstract painting. You know, the shoulders and the shape are here, but the face at this point turns into literally a smiley face. And in some ways, you know, we have emojis and smiley faces because they're the simplest way to convey that same complex emotion that you get from a real smile. So in this new study, researchers are testing how well current AI models can preserve the meaning of the image. Like if the meaning of the image is the rock in this example, when it's repeatedly passed back and forth between a single image generator and an image describer, which is what they're calling the setup of a visual telephone game, we should be able to learn what is actually changing about what it understands that is in the image in the first place. So starting with a diverse descriptive prompt, they asked an AI image generator to create a picture, and then they had a language model describe that picture, and then fed that description back into the image generator again and again and again. And after many iterations, the image drifted far from the original prompt and converged onto a small set of generic visual themes. So you can see it is pretty interesting over time how it can sort of capture this idea of the newspapers and the man sort of moving out in this top case, but yet moving in on this bottom set, sometimes capturing that sort of monochrome look, and then sometimes when color pops in, it just is able to retain that. You know, aspects of this room, such as the ceiling work and the dimensionality, sort of stay for a while, but once the description gets it wrong, it hallucinates some kind of a change. Now we have these oval rooms for a while. And it showed that as AIs tend to lose specificity and creativity over repeated transformation cycles, this study suggests that without humans to help guide them, today's generative AIs often default to familiar, bland patterns rather than maintaining or even enhancing creative content. So AI, just keep that in mind. Like right now, AI models just don't reliably preserve creative intent. Not when they're left to just evolve on their own. They will quickly converge on a limited set of generic themes instead of producing these genuinely novel or, you know, faithful visual interpretations of what we were hoping for. All right, so here's another new interesting model. A team from the University of Ottawa has created an AI-driven system that protects wireless networks from jamming attacks in real time. Took me a second to think about what that might even be, right? Like an AI-driven system to protect a wireless network from a jamming attack. So my first thought was when you have noise-canceling headphones, what they're doing is hearing some sound. They're seeing the waves in the air that are coming in, and they're saying, this is what it looks like. Here's what's good, which is like probably the human sound of voices, and here's what's bad, like the hum of an engine or something, and then canceling out the sound that doesn't make sense. So if you try to jam a signal, can you figure out what's not a normal sound and jam it? And that's kind of what I think is happening. So instead of relying on traditional reactive defenses, this is an approach that uses two cooperating AI agents that continuously learn to predict the interference and then take an action. So to keep a wireless service running smoothly, even under an attack. Think about the entire city talking on a bunch of different cell phones, all talking to a tower. Those would have certain patterns. And if you tried to jam it by creating a whole bunch of random sort of waves in those same frequencies, yeah, maybe it could say, hey, look at all this stuff that doesn't look nearly close enough to normal. So the jamming would have to get more sophisticated, but I could also imagine an adversarial AI learning that too. But it's a wild thought, and it's especially important for critical infrastructures like emergency services, smart transportation, and connected cities, where reliable communications are essential. By the way, did you ever see this video where they had the drones falling out from the air? I think it was like a drone show or something, and somebody probably put one of those gun jammers up there, and they're just dropping like flies. That'd be so dangerous if it was above a city or something. You see a ton of them can't keep the formation. Wait, what is this video? Is this real? They can put a jammer inside of a gun like that? What are those? The different frequencies that you can jam a drone on? You put a scope on it? And then, oh, that's crazy. You think this is real or you think this is a joke? This is probably staged. It might be real. Maybe you can jam a signal that way. Yeah, maybe. I mean, it didn't just fall out of the sky, but yeah, maybe they've lost control over it, so it's going back to its home base or something. Okay, so even though I'm not sure about that drone gun, I'm pretty sure this one's faked.
Seem right.
That does not seem right. Think somebody hacked it?
Yeah, I think someone hacked it. There's a new AI model that's shockingly good at reading human minds. What if they show on screen what the human's thinking about and it looks just like that drone show we just saw? The hacked version. Just like, bro, come on. Researchers, Texas A&M University, have developed a new artificial intelligence system called OmniPredict. It's astonishingly good at anticipating what human behavior is going to be before it is done, and it is interpreting both visual cues like posture and movement, along with the broader context of real-time data. It's a pretty neat model. It's not just reacting to motion like a lot of them are. It's really predicting, I wouldn't say a full world model, but it's bringing in a lot of visual cues and all that posture and three-dimensional information to make its decision. So it is using a multimodal large language model, the same kind underlining tech-like advanced chatbots and image understanding, to forecast pedestrian actions, such as someone who might or might not step right into a street in front of a car. You know, this is another thing that, as much as I cover all this AI stuff, I hadn't quite thought about, but it makes a lot of sense because not only could a car, a vehicle like my Tesla, be able to see somebody in the road and slam on the brakes, it should make some predictions that go even beyond humans. Now, I certainly, as a human, if I see soccer ball roll into the street, a kid could run after it, right? Like, I have to be aware. Certainly, I look at certain people and they're moving really quickly or sporadically, or, you know, if you've ever been to somewhere where someone's like maybe on drugs or something, they're acting weird. You're like, ooh, that person might actually step in front of my car. They're acting weird. We have some ability to predict and kind of tune our movements to make the world safer. And I think AI being able to predict where somebody is going to go and how they're going to behave has all sorts of crazy other contexts that I think could be damaging or privacy concerns. But for a car to make a prediction about if somebody's going to step in front of it seems like a very powerful tool. An early test showed this model is outperforming traditional model behavior prediction benchmarks, hinting at a future where machines don't just see what we do, but they reason about what we're likely to do next and maybe make decisions to greatly improve urban environments. Hype this video, and maybe there's something people can learn from this kind of content too, because the world is changing very fast, and it's fun to be here with you, just taking it day by day. We'll see you in the next video.